it's Marina, Travel Experta. Today, we're going to be talking about driving in Mexico. Are you guys ready for an adventure? Let's begin. So you will, at one point or another, if you are going to be doing a longer trip in Mexico, either rent a car, come in a car, or something to do with a car. Even if you hire a private driver, these are really good tips and just understanding of how Mexico works overall. At this point, we have rented a car in Mexico. We have driven a car in Mexico. We have crossed the border from one country to another into Mexico with our car. I have podcast completely going into if you are bringing your car across the border, which is really common, especially if you're coming from like Guatemala, Belize, or the United States into Mexico. Chances are will do that, and it's super easy, but make sure that you go and listen to my podcast explaining all of that. This podcast, I really want to cover about just the ways of driving in Mexico, because as every country has their own thing, Mexico obviously has their thing as well. First and foremost, I really recommend you having pesos on hand to have the local currency, because it's just really good to have, and obviously a credit card, but just in case if your credit card doesn't work, you always want to have a backup plan. We have found that US dollars and other currencies are not accepted in Mexico just like that. Like, it's really hard to find where to exchange money, and I have an entire podcast about exchanging money in Mexico because it's not as easy as people think. Anyways, so the reason why I bring that up is because there are a lot of toll roads. I mean, a lot. The roads in Mexico are really great, and for a good reason, because of the tolls, and the tolls pay for these great roads. So, and they're not that cheap. Like, I remember we did one drive, which was around 7 hours, and we probably hit like 10 tolls. Each of them, the average was $5. So the majority of them you can pay with credit card, but just in case if it doesn't work and their systems could fail, we also had pesos on hand, which was really helpful. But we were surprised at the amount of tolls that there are in Mexico. So make sure you have that. Checkpoints. Guys, there will be a ton of checkpoints, either because of the caravans that were going from, Central America through Mexico into United States, or whatever the reasons are. There are tons of checkpoints. Don't freak out with them. They're literally just checking to see about illegals, migrants, probably trying to pretend that they're looking for the narcos, the drugs, but that's not really, I don't believe is happening. But just be prepared for it. Don't get freaked out. They're not there to bribe you. We went through a ton of checkpoints. Not once did any of them ask for money as a bribe. I know that that's kind of like a myth that's been going around. If it is true, we certainly did not have any of that experience. And we drove probably in total maybe 80 hours in Mexico in a car. That's a lot of hours in a car in Mexico, in various parts of Mexico. The majority of the times they won't even stop you if they see who you are. They are looking for specific cars, but there will be times that you will be stopped. So make sure that you have car insurance. Make sure that your paperwork is up to date, because they will give you problems if your paperwork is not up to date. But again, if you brought in through the border, chances are your paperwork is up to date, because they will not let you cross the border. And if you're renting, everything should be completely in order as well. So as I mentioned earlier, the roads are fantastic. Yes, you do have options for the no toll way, which usually adds 1 or 2 hours on top of the drive. Mexico is huge, guys. There are many, many isolated roads, lonely roads, even the toll roads. And if you're going to go for the no toll to save some money, those roads are not great. They might actually even end up costing you more, because they could be dirt road or bumpy or in holes and all this other stuff. The other thing that we found is there are a ton of speed bumps. So be careful. The majority of time they do have signs for it, but there's also a lot of times they don't, and they are not drawn out. So either because the villagers got together and decided to just put in a random speed bump that is not legal, so you can't tell. Just be always on the lookout for them, and they could happen on a highway. If you see a couple of little houses that is starting to form into a little village, chances are there might be a speed bump there, which could totally destroy your car if you are going really fast. Now, back to the roads being, each distance is really far from another. Mexico is a really big country, and each state is huge. So have gas, because there were times that we went almost 200 kilometers with absolutely no gas station in sight. It's just nothingness, total barren land. So always have a full tank of gas whenever you see a gas station. Don't let your car get less than half tank if you are going to do a long distance. That is a pretty big deal. We drove mainly in the daytime because there are, rumors saying that it's not safe to drive at night, this and that. Overall, we did end up having to drive a couple of times in the evening. It was, especially in the cities, it's not that bad. We never once felt unsafe. So, but you just want to be, have precaution on your side. So these are like the main things that I really recommend, and just what we've experienced driving in Mexico. If you guys have other feedback, I'd love to hear it. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it with your friends. Leave me a review, and remember to make every day an adventure.